This time I'm going to ask Mr. Jewell and Mr. Licata to come to the table, and I'm going to join them. Well, good evening. You don't look too bad down here. This evening we are going to present the proposed budget from the superintendent. We will not go into detail about the budget, but I do want to remind the board that the superintendent has followed the same format as she has in the past. Presented in this budget is a cost of doing business. And there is also presented in the budget a priority list. I need to remind the board and the citizens of Harford County that the priority list is not included in the budget. It is not included in the numbers in the budget. It was not included last year, and it is not included this year. The only thing in the budget that is included as a request for revenue is the cost of doing business. So, there's something that we need to do tonight, and I want to preface it by saying the following. I do not want any remarks that are made this evening or any facts that are shared this evening by myself or any members of my leadership team that I might call upon to be misconstrued as being finger-pointing, because they absolutely are not. Let's be honest. Nationally and in this county, we have gone through an absolutely hard fiscal and economic depression. And the reality of the whole entire thing is we had to do with what we were given. Were we out there advocating? Were we out there begging? Were we out there banging on doors? And I'll quote one of our speakers tonight, rattling cages. Yes, we were. But we did it in a respectful, professional manner and advocated for our children, our employees, and for this community. And we will continue to do that. I am not going to reiterate the extensive outreach that's been done in order to bring people in tune with exactly what the situation is and exactly what it is that we need, because that to me would be redundant, and I'm certainly not looking for another star in my crown. The bottom line is that we do need to make sure that everyone is on the same page regarding a few topics. When we come back after the holiday, we may have a few more topics, because I am going to entertain the fact that members of this board, members of school-based administration, the leadership team, members of the community may have suggestions for us on topics that we may need to clarify. So, on that note, we're going to begin. First thing I want to talk about is maintenance of effort. And by the way, let me interject that I feel fairly well versed on these topics. So please do not think in any way, shape, or form, if I turn to any of my colleagues or members of the Office of Finance, that the reason might be that I don't understand. The reason would be that they may be more expert than I am, and I want to make sure this is very clear to everybody. So, maintenance of effort is per pupil funding. Maryland regulations require the Harford County government to fund Harford County Public Schools at the same dollar rate as the year before. What's important to understand about maintenance of effort is the requirement is to fund at the dollar rate, not at what you need to run a high-quality, first-class school system. So, Harford County Public Schools was funded at $5,834 per student for the FY15 school year. Harford County government must fund us at the same rate for this year. Just at that rate. They don't have to fund us any higher, but they cannot fund us any lower. So the reality is, if there are mandates that come down, we have to find that money if we are only funded at $5,834 in the money that is existing in our budget. Does maintenance of effort fund the same level of service as the prior year? The answer to that is absolutely no, it does not. Because if, for some unusual reason, an unfunded mandate comes down and we're only funded at $5,834, I believe that's the number, we have to find the money within our existing budget to make sure that the children and the teachers are able to fulfill whatever that mandate has to be. And we all know that we do get mandates that are not funded. So we have to make that work. What is not covered in maintenance of effort? In maintenance of effort, if the state does not give us the funding that they gave us before, the county is not responsible for making that money up. That could very easily happen when you have a downtrend in enrollment. State gives you money for every child you have, your enrollment goes down, you lose state funding. You could lose state funding for a myriad of reasons. It could be in special education, it could be in Title I programming. The county is not obliged to make that up, but we are obliged to provide for our children and for the teachers that take care of our children so that instructional program remains sound. Cost to maintain current level of employee and retiree benefits, not covered by the maintenance of effort. Wage packages, not covered by maintenance of effort. State and federal mandates, not covered by maintenance of effort. Increases in everyday expenses. The expenses that you have an unusually snowy, icy winter, cost more money in overtime. That is not covered through maintenance of effort. We have to find the money in the budget that we have to make that work. Mr. Licata would like to make a comment.
I want to add a comment here about those expenses because we often hear, we read about in the paper, people make the comment when we present our enrollment report that if we're losing students, why do we continue to ask for additional money? And to give you an example, we lost 299 students. First of all, let me explain one common misnomer. At the county level, in the maintenance of effort formula, it is adjusted for the reduction in enrollment. So they have to fund us at the same rate per pupil they did, but it's based on the number of students we have. So if the number of students go down, they give us less dollars per pupil, less dollars based on the total number of students we have. So they do make an adjustment in funding, and the state makes that same adjustment in funding when our enrollment goes down. So the idea that we always need more money even though enrollment is going down, we're losing money at the same time based on the number of students that we're losing. So that's an important concept to keep in mind. Related to that is, if you look at the number of students we lost this year, for example, 299 students, that's an average of 5.5 students per school. Even if it translated to 5.5 students in a particular classroom, we're still going to spend the same amount of money to heat, light, air condition, and maintain that classroom, regardless of the number of students that are in there. It's a small number. You still have to turn on the lights. You still have to operate the building. So those costs, those expenses, as they're going up, are still going to be paid, even though the enrollment across the county might be going down by that small amount across 38,000 students. If it was all concentrated in one school, 200 students, 100 students, okay, an adjustment would be made because obviously you would reduce the number of classes that you have, reduce the number of staff. But 299 students spread out over 54 schools, there is no adjustment that can be made because the effect on the classroom and staffing is very minimal. So I just wanted to point that out. There's not a one-to-one relationship between the number of students that you lose and what it costs to operate a building, for example.
I do want to ask Mr. Jewell to comment on the wealth factor. We've talked about that, how Hartford County has an incredibly high wealth factor that is calculated by the state, and I think that's another important piece when we talk about maintenance of effort.
Under the state guidelines for the state aid funding, they take into consideration your enrollment growth or decreases in enrollment. They also look at the wealth factor of the county itself, the assessable base, the income tax, personal property, and such. And if your county has increased wealth compared to other counties in the state assumption is your county is wealthier, therefore it can afford more locally to fund towards education. So you can have a decrease in enrollment and an increase in wealth, and you're going to basically get a bigger hit in loss of state funding from the wealth factor versus your enrollment loss. Vice versa. If enrollment goes down and your wealth drops tremendously, you could end up with an increase in state aid. Hopefully you understand that, because the wealth factor is spread throughout the state aid computations. And Hartford County, for the last 3 years, has had increasing wealth compared to other local county governments.
And I think it's important that everyone understands that the state does surmise that if you are a wealthier county, that slack would be picked up by the local. Does that make sense? Okay? Well, we've heard over and over again, what did you do with the $24 million that you've gotten from 2008 to 2015? What exactly happened to it? Okay? And the bottom line is that I'm not quite sure that everybody understands where that money went. And I think it's important that we really do enunciate for people exactly where that money did go. $8.8 million went to pension. I think everyone recalls that a lot of that was shifted over to the locals. So $8.8 million to pension. We lost $7 million in state funding. Those losses bring us now up to 15.8 of the $24 million. Now we start to see a little bit of Christmas red and green, and you can see that in order to maintain employee and retiree health care and other benefits, it was a cost of $19.7 million. We are now up to 35.5. We're only given 24, so now we're in the red, $11.5 million. That $11.5 million had to come out of the budget that we had. Another $4.8 million special education. Now it's minus. That's okay. Now it's minus $16.3 million. Another $3.5 million in transportation. And I might add that all of the work that was done with bus stop changes et al., had that not been done, that number would have been approximately about $4.5 million. So even though we saved money, we didn't save that kind of money. And then the employee wage packages. That was a cost of $18.6 billion. So when all was said and done, even though from 2008 to 2015, we were given $24 million, we were basically $38.4 million in the red. So from FY8 to FY15, in order to maintain services and provide a wage package, Hartford County Public Schools had to implement 38,400 $38,400,000 in cost-saving measures. Oh, that would only be true. So I think this is important to see. And we're not pointing this out because any of this was a burden. We're not looking at it that way. But we want to point out that $24 million does sound like a lot of money, because it is a lot of money. But that $24 million grew very quickly into a much larger number. And I think that's important for people to hear. So now the next topic is enrollment and how enrollment affects staffing. I guess the question, what we hear all the time is, well, your enrollment's going down, so why do you need teachers? Your enrollment's going down, so why do you need to have, instructional programming, or why do you need to have new interventions, or what do you need? So that is a question that really needs to be answered, and here's the answer. Enrollment is not the only factor that affects staffing, and anyone that believes that is really grossly misinformed. And tonight, I'm hoping to eliminate that for everybody. The first thing is we have to take into consideration student needs. I will tell you, as this presentation was developed, I was absolutely shocked to hear that during this time period from 2008 to 2015, we went from a night program to a day program in alternative education. And that was a cost factor. Red Pump Elementary, for example, was built. Staffing. Needs in special education. All different types of things that needed to occur in order to secure our children instructionally and safely. Services provided, a myriad of interventions. Accountability has become absolutely a very, very demanding situation. And the types of services that need to be provided to make sure that children have optimal opportunities have grown 100-fold, in my opinion. And I've been around a long time. Instructional programming, magnet schools, extracurricular activities, opportunities for kids to do everything that they need to do to really develop as young adults. We talked about building schools. So people need to keep in mind that enrollment doesn't necessarily enunciate how many teachers that you need. Does that make sense? Okay? I know it makes sense to you. I want to make sure it makes sense to everyone. Now here's another curious piece. So on September 30th of 2004, we were at peak enrollment, 40,294 students. September 30th, 14, current enrollment, 37,537 students. So in 10 years, basically we've dropped student enrollment by 2,757 students. So the difference since peak enrollment is 2,757. So let's assume an average class size of 25. And I know I got a lot of principals and assistant principals and IFs and supervisors sitting behind me. And they would give anything to have every class have a maximum of 25 students in it. But let's just, for the sake of discussion, assume a class size of 25. That would mean that based on the drop in enrollment, we should have cut 110 teaching positions. We didn't do that. We cut 146. And I think that's an important number for everyone to see. And this is in light of building new schools, magnet programs, alternative ed, everything that comes along with unfunded mandates, everything that comes along with intervention, all of those things that are important for our children and important for our teachers so that they can conduct classes in the way that they want to. So the reality of it is we did cut 36 more teachers than we needed to cut. And I think that's very important for people to see. So at this time, I think I did a reasonably good job trying to bring everyone together. But I am going to turn to my leadership team and the people in the finance office, and I will not be in any way, shape, or form offended if you need to enhance anything that I said this evening. So if there are any comments, please go to the podium and add what it is that you need to add. Okay, so they appear to be very cooperative and timid tonight. So I hope that you appreciated the time that we put into this tonight. I do want to hear from you, and I do want to hear from members of the community and our school teachers, principals, assistant principals et al. Because when we present in detail in January, if there are other topics that need to be highlighted or anything that I might have touched upon tonight that I did not enunciate enough, we will be more than happy to do that. And at this time, I'm going to turn this presentation over to Mr. Jewell.
The budget books were delivered to you today. I'm not going to go spend 3 hours sitting here going through everything in the budget book. We asked that you take a review of it. We'll get into the detailed numbers at the first meeting in January and give you the highlights, and then we'll go into the details on a program-by-program basis. So I'm going to stop there because I don't want to spend hours going through numbers.
Any questions from anybody? The members of the leadership team, myself, Joe, Jim? Yes.
Ms. Canavan, can you talk a little bit about, I know you talked about the numbers not being driven just by enrollment. Can you talk a little bit about the intensity of the service level of a lot of the student population at the present time?
Well, I'm going to try to capture it as best as I can, and then maybe turn to some members of my leadership team. We have a lot of students that come to school and they're simply not ready to learn. And at the elementary level, there is an onerous task to try to create a level playing field. And sadly, that gap is not always closed. So there are a myriad of interventions, a myriad of grouping practices that are utilized in the elementary school and then carry over to the middle school. Very frequently, students will arrive at the middle school door despite all of the efforts that are done at the elementary school, and there is still a gap. You have students that experience severe abuse and neglect. You have students that do not make sound choices at all levels that are involved with juvenile services and the law. And you have counseling services, psychological services that are needed, special ed services that are needed for students who require IEPs. Then you have the challenge of the students that are advanced learners and gifted learners. They need to be provided for also. And these students come through the door every day at every single level. And we need to be there for them, and we need to provide for them what it is that they need, regardless of what the number is. But frankly, what's occurring is that, the mantra of doing more with less just does not ring true anymore. And people are struggling. Teachers are struggling, parents are struggling, central office, school-based, we're all struggling. We heard comments tonight. And what we need is we really need to step back and take a look at education in Harford County and equate it with the future of this county, and what the kids are the future of the county, and we've got to provide for them. So there is just so much, the accountability piece, the testing piece. You have counselors, you have assistant principals who have months of their time encompassed by organizing just for testing alone. And you have to make provisions as teams within a school to continue to provide the service for students. Because kids don't understand that you don't have time. It's kind of like that commercial when the guy goes in to his son and says, Daddy's got to take a sick day. We just can't do that. We can't say, we don't have the revenue. I'm really sorry, we just can't do this for you. We can't do it. We're now at a point where the rubber's really hitting the road. You heard a presentation regarding teacher retention and recruitment. We've been talking about salaries and compensation. All of this, it really does come together as a tangled web that has to be untangled. I really didn't mean to drone dramatic, but I don't know what other way to explain it.
Well, actually, you know, the point that you make about sometimes, unfortunately, the school system has had to say that we simply don't have the revenue and we can't provide the service. I remember feeling very badly when you have people come to this podium, a parent who was begging for a summer school program.
Right.
That I'm certain would have been a great benefit, not just to his child, but to other children. But I recall that program having to be cut
That's right.
because the revenue was not there.
We've made some great sacrifices.
So we really have to, you know, decide as a community what kind of education we want to provide to our students.
And I totally agree with you, Cassandra. And I think the key phrase there is deciding as a community and coming together as a community.
I think we
Enough
really
said
have
on that.
got to, and we've gone to these budget sessions where, unfortunately, the number of bodies in the room were not what we would have hoped. And I'm hoping that perhaps through other means, maybe online, that somehow or other, that we're getting the word out to the community that we need you in on this. That this is not a decision that we really can make without the community's input about what they want their schools to look like and what services they want provided to their students and what number of students they want in the classrooms. So somehow or other, we must, through everyone here, we must get that word out that we need you to come and talk to us and tell us what kind of school system you want for your children.
And we're making we have made an ardent effort and continue to do that. But I would have to reiterate that this is not the only body that needs to hear that. If we're going to work together as a community, then it needs to be a community effort. And that word needs to be shared with everyone that has a hand in the future of Harford County.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions?
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
would like to end with one, we would like to at least ask Jim to share with you what our request is. So that way it is on record and it is there for the public.
Good. Thank you very much.
And I would encourage any member of the board and any member of the community or community groups that would like to talk with us or meet with us to please give us a call and we'll be happy to do that. We are sometimes limited in scope because of meeting laws, et cetera, but we're happy to work around a lot of that.
The total requested change for next year's budget is an increase of $23,989,452, which is a change of 5.6%. And that deals with funding the next installment of the teacher's pension system, health dental insurance adjustment increases, some cost savings of $1.2 million. We have a wage and salary package of $16.4 million in the requested budget. And then there's some cost of doing business pieces in the instructional curriculum, instructional special education, operations and administration of $3,241,000. So in total, it's $23,989,000 requested in the budget, of which, due to the wealth factor and the revenue enrollment changes, we will be requesting $26,274,177 from the county government.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Frisch.
Just thank you very much.
Sorry.
No, thank you.
There's been a lot of discussion over the past several years about the use of fund balance to make our ends meet. To what degree is fund balance used in your calculations for this budget?
The current year, we have 5.5 million in the budget. Next year, I only expect to have $3 million. It's going down. And after we get through this year, there'll be very little left. After we get through the 16 year.
Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, it's good business practice to retain how much in your fund balance?
Best practice would be maintain 5% of your operating budget. And of our operating budget, I would need about 25 million. 25 million would give the salary increases to the employees that haven't had any for 5 years.
Exactly. Thank you for the clarification.
Well, if I may, just to, thank you for the presentation, Superintendent Canavan, and the hard work of your staff. And I know you sought a lot of input from the community at large as well. And you clarified some misperceptions, I think, that were out there regarding where did the 24 million go. And I imagine that you will, in fact, make those same arguments moving forward towards other key decision makers.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, we're already in the works for that. We're already planning that.
Right, because I think there are some misunderstandings about where that money had gone, and I think we understand it here on the board, and I think other members on the county council might understand it, but I think it needs to perhaps be greater emphasized, and I'm glad that you're going to do that, so.
Yeah, we definitely are, and we're also going to add that to our budget outreach next year as we meet with a variety of community groups. We'll add this to it so that we make sure that everyone understands clearly and has opportunities to ask us questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Al.
Just a comment to put that into perspective from a revenue standpoint. $26 million divided by 90,000 taxable households is about $266 per household. When you divide it by per capita, it's about $118 per person to fully fund this budget. So I think that helps, or hopefully that helps put it in perspective.
It does, and thank you.
And remember, fully funding does not cover any of the things on the priority list, which are needs of the system, but the dollars are not in the requested budget.
True.
But we would be very grateful.
Ms. Beverly.
Ms. Canavan, do you plan to put any of that on the website?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.